space as well. Please now welcome an IT leader from Sri Lanka who needs absolutely no introduction. His extensive experience has set many precedents in the country, and it's our pleasure to have Ramesh Shanmuganathan, the Group CIO at John Keels, and he's in conversation with Rahul Neelmani. Take it away, Rahul.
Thank you, Ashwin. The day is going superb so far, and we have heard a lot of experts from business and technology domain from Sri Lanka since we began today's proceedings. Here's the time for an exclusive conversation with an exclusive person. Now, before I start the conversation and also introduce my special guest for this session, let me put certain things in perspective. The COVID-19 pandemic in the last 16 to 17 months has posed massive challenges to every single actor in this social system. And individuals and businesses in South Asia are absolutely no exception. While the well-established corporations moved towards digital transformation faster because they were somewhat prepared, it took some time for the rest of them to grapple with the situation. However, the acceleration of digital transformation was a very universal phenomenon in the South Asian countries, including Sri Lanka. The drastic change in the environment required new approaches and solutions, imperatives that must be embraced by all sections of the economy to survive and to stay relevant. The outbreak of the pandemic also saw people and institutions grappling to keep up with day-to-day activities. One of the key challenges observed was in the areas of transacting for goods and services in what can be called as increasingly contactless world. Across the world, including Sri Lanka, the digital modes of communications, including payments, started to boom thanks to the introduction of new technologies coupled with other developments to encourage and emerge of the innovative ways of doing things. However, there are still many areas where businesses can improve to thrive better. And to discuss some of these issues, we have with us none other than Ramesh Shanmuganathan, a visionary, a thought leader, a transformation strategist, and also the Executive Vice President and Group CIO at John Keels Holding Sri Lanka, which is a diversified conglomerate with presence in food and beverages, transport, leisure, information technology, BPO, financial services, property development, and more. Hello, Ramesh. Welcome to the fourth edition of Sri Lanka Digital Dialogue 2021. You have been part of this since the beginning of our endeavor. How are you doing today?
Good, Rahul. Nice to be back again with Dynamic CIO.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure to have you for this session. So let me begin with asking that as per a PwC CEO report recently done globally, the top priorities for businesses are to attain growth, retain workforce, and seek operational efficiency aligned with the new normal. How would you describe the scenario in Sri Lanka? Did the second wave impact much? How are the businesses recovering from it?
I think, obviously, each country context has been a bit different. So I think if you remember the conversation we had last year, we were expecting a kind of at least a prolonged U-shaped recovery. But I feel this pandemic has been a black swan event that no one has ever seen or fathomed in this modern world in terms of the impact it has created, so widespread, so prolonged. So the challenge that we also see is today, I don't know whether we call it a W-shaped recovery or a mixed bag of V, U, and W. I don't know, right? Because we don't know what to expect tomorrow, right? So given that context, I think most organizations today are focusing on employee well-being in terms of, first and foremost, being able to sustain and kind of be resilient in the current context. So I think that has become top priority for us. Especially the employee well-being, to ensure that we are becoming more resilient in the current context. Whilst we also then look at reimagining what the future would be, and then remodel our way in terms of what we could potentially do, right? I think as I said, the broader priorities would still remain more or less the same, right? Obviously, you would want to kind of recover and then grow in terms of the economic context. But the challenges that I see in a varied way, if you look at the most advanced or most technologically savvy organizations have been able to transition and manage all of these three phases of building resiliency, reimagining, and remodeling much more effectively than those who have not. The primary reason I always compare this to a box of Lego toys, right? So if you can go and buy a toy, obviously if you get bored with it, you have to throw it away. But if you have a box of Lego, you get bored with the toy. If you have this thing, you could kind of at least break it down and rebuild. And you could probably do it with the shortest possible time. But obviously, you're then handicapped by your imaginative capacity in terms of what do you imagine could be done with the box of Lego toys in front of you, right? And today, business is no different, right? Everyone has access to the same opportunity, but have the same tools. But what can each of them do with it would depend in terms of how their possibilities and the opportunity and appetite to reimagine the future for themselves, right? So I think that is where I feel a lot of businesses are probably struggling. Is not because that they don't know that obviously the future is never going to be the same, right? The world is never going to be the same, and holding on to status quo is not going to be one of the options. So given that, I would again kind of re-emphasize that building resiliency is top priority, because it is about building employee welfare and ensure your employees are taken care of, whilst then ensuring that you build in terms of the remodeling your way, obviously based on what you think the future would be.
No, very well summarized in the first answer itself. I think it's the gist of the entire conversation that I'm going to have with you. Right from building resiliency to take care of sustained growth and employee welfare, to reimagining because things are not normal and are not going to be normal, and to remodel because you have to attune yourself with the new normal. And therefore, you brilliantly said that the tools are available across to everyone. It's up to you how to stitch it together, how to use that Lego, and what can you bring out of it. Brilliant. So while businesses and employees both took a hit due to restrictions imposed and due to health emergencies, the technology, especially the digital tools, the digital part of technology, played a very strong and decisive role in connecting and developing new relationships with the customers. What's changed in the past 1 year? If I ask you, as an experienced CIO, as an experienced practitioner, how should CIOs look at digital as a means to participate in what we call as an experience economy?
I think the compulsion for us to drive engagement, be it an employee, be it a customer, be it a partner, was always there. Again, I go back to my earlier thing in terms of the tools were there, right? If you look at Zoom, Teams, Google Talk was there for 5 years, right? But when did we start using it? Maybe 1 year back, right? So the issue is not about that there are a lack of tools for driving engagement and the experience economy. But the challenge was most of us were comfortable that, and we were preoccupied in terms of financial returns, and we became by choice transactional as organizations, right? So we never really profiled the customer beyond a transaction because we were happy with the ROI and then maybe the return on capital employed and the TCOs that we were seeing, right? So what did pandemic do? It all of a sudden kind of questioned all the baseline assumptions that organizations were operating upon, right? So, which also gave a greater power to customers, even employees, because today, even you take an employee, today an employee sitting at home has the entire world as an opportunity to work, because today the fundamental assumption you need to come to an office is no more there.
Absolutely.
Right? So when
Absolutely.
I am sitting at my home, for me, the entire world is an opportunity to be working for. Right? So, and in the past, it wasn't the case. Right? Same for the consumer. So today, if I'm going to shop online, my mom and pop store around the corner or the supermarket closest to me is not the only option. The world is the option, right? So all of a sudden, the degree of connectedness, though we say that we are separated by 6 degrees and on Facebook it has come down to 3, the degree of connectedness overnight, both because of the pandemic, became very visible, right? Which wasn't so visible because people were still living in a physical, the brick and mortar world, right? The moment you get to the digital world, your degrees of separation keeps kind of plummeting, and you see the possibilities are up to you, be it an employee, be it a customer, be it a partner. So today the power has shifted from the organizations to the constituents, right? So that is where I feel what pandemic has done is in terms of maybe I think that book, The World is Flat, more and more a reality than a kind of a dream, right? The world is become more flatter post pandemic than ever before.
So it's a very positive way of looking at things, that the power has shifted from an organization to the constituent, and the world has become flatter than ever before. I mean, that's a very, very optimistic view, and not many people think like that. I wish many more people think like that. However, if we bring our focus to certain very transactional areas, for example, as an industry observer and as a practitioner, where do you see the investments, now and in the future pertaining to technology? Will it be more into the cloud or AI or automation or cybersecurity? And if it is across all of these things, what's your recommendation as a seasoned practitioner? Where should CIOs invest more?
I would hate to be prescriptive, but I think if I may kind of rewind a bit in terms of, as I said, today you need to look at a playbook which befits you as an organization, depending on who your constituents are. And so that warrants you to understand where in that phase of the evolution or revolution that you are in, right? Say, for example, you take, I'm just taking an example. You take India, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
The demonetization made Paytm mainstream in terms of payments,
Absolutely.
right? Because a disruption in the environment caused something to become mainstream, right? So today, COVID, whether you like it or not, has hit reset on a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we are back to, I would not probably use this as an example, but we have been brought to ground zero, right? So when you're in ground zero, what is that stopping you from doing something differently, right? The question is, when you're in ground zero, do you want to build again what you had, or do you want to reimagine and build something? If you take a white paper approach, something new, right?
Absolutely.
So that is the opportunity that you have, right? So if you're like I kind of very often compare it to a startup versus a legacy organization. A startup has no inhibitions, right? So today, if I'm starting a business, Why would I invest in all this tech when everything is available to me on a pay-as-you-go? Right.
Absolutely.
So the question is, what is that I need to kind of stitch, which needs investment in the long term? Because today, cash is the single most valuable asset that you need to manage, right? So your working capital is the critical thing you need to manage. So given that, if that is what you need to manage, it's important for us to then ensure that we have to prioritize our investments in terms of our business priorities as well, right? So given the current context, I definitely feel employee is the most critical constituent today, right? Because if you take care of your employees are the one who take care of your customers and your partners and the rest of the ecosystem, right? So it's important for us to then nurture that employee, ensure that we have the technology in place to ensure that wherever they are able to contribute to the priorities and the aspirations of the organization, right? Then obviously, then we're extending that to the partners who are obviously forming the ecosystem for you to add value, right? So today, if you take the value chain, I truly believe today we have the opportunity, like what I spoke of the Lego toy. We don't have to own the entire value chain, so we can collaborate, we can co-innovate, we can co-create, right? So it's important for us to then really engage from an ecosystem perspective and have enabling technology which facilitates that, right? Not technology which is becoming roadblocks for that journey, right? So that is where I would think obviously the core systems obviously is the priority in terms of enabling that, and cloud enabling them is going to be critical, whether it's a ERP, CRM, HRM, so that the person having access to the internet and a mobile device should be able to access whatever they need. They don't need any sophisticated tech to access it. So cloud enabling those is going to be the number one priority. So once we do cloud enablement, it's important for us to understand now today, we are not in a China wall anymore in terms of security. So how do I ensure that if my constituents are going to be all over the world, how do I ensure I operate in a fail-safe manner? Then obviously the zero trust architecture, the zero trust approach to security is going to be primal, right? So in terms of two-factor authentication, in terms of you looking at your user device, information, your asset, your network, your workflows, all of those becomes very, very, very important. Then the question is, once you have, these are for me foundational aspects of what tech needs to do for the new normal. Then you're talking about all what you spoke of to drive that experience economy, be it an employee, be it a customer, be it a partner. Then you're talking about a data-driven journey. What do we need? Is it an IoT solution in a supermarket, in a factory? Is it an automation solution which makes someone to do self-service? Or is it about driving big data and AI to give personalization, right? So all of those then, depending on where you are in the journey, obviously would be your opportunity to invest and leverage. So as I said, very difficult to be prescriptive, but I would think each organization needs to make an assessment of where they are and then chart their way forward.
So, you in the beginning, you said that you don't want to be prescriptive, and good that you put that caveat upfront. But you have been excellent in your approach. Gradually, right from the time that organizations should think about not being, too control freak, and therefore, avail the SaaS models, adopt a cloud-based approach. Why to invest the important constituent like cash into something where you can actually work on a pay-per-use model. Wonderful. And also, keeping your business objectives in mind, you have to decide which technology to embark upon, which solutions to gradually go into. Great. So, moving on to a few more questions before I end this conversation. There's no doubt about the fact the recovery from this Great Depression or the dent to economy will surely be a long recovery. However, it will also be a digital-led recovery. Now, you have been, since the beginning of this conversation, you have been giving the example of a Lego. How to construct that Lego. You have constituents. You have to construct that as per your needs. So here, if I can, so Lego comes with a very prescriptive approach. They have step by step information how to construct that. So what are your recommendations to the peers and the CIOs? Where and how shall they focus?
So the main thing I think to reflect upon in terms of obviously, as I said, this phase of building resiliency and recovery, and as you reimagine to remodel your way, you all obviously have to focus on, I would think, what you call these control towers, right? Your financial control tower, your customer control tower, your supplier management, your manufacturing, your inventory, your warehousing. So depending on your key value drivers, right? So your value chain, right? So obviously, I think there lies the opportunity when you're then relooking at and reimagining your value chain and your constituents of the value chain, is where the opportunities would present to you in terms of, okay, how can I do this? Say, for example, retail, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been predominantly a brick and mortar retail company, Keels, right? So pandemic obviously challenged the whole thing overnight. A lot of people were clamoring to get onto online, right? Mm-hmm. So then our physical stores, during that phase of lockdown, became worthless assets, right? Became just extended distributed warehouses, right? So the question is, so we have a choice of, okay, do we have the decentralized 100-odd warehouses, which are our stores, or do we have an opportunity also to repurpose it to central warehouse and make it truly a digital store, right? So the question is, it's a choice. And there are no right or wrong answers, because depending on where you are and what your convictions are, you might choose either or both, right? So that is where I feel the challenge is not with tech. The challenge is, where would you place your bet, right? So the Lego toy will facilitate you to build both, right? Absolutely. But it is your dream, right? So if your dream is biased towards a brick and mortar world, you will end up building that. But if your dream is to build a digital world, you will end up building that. So the convictions ultimately is what will navigate your next normal or the new normal, unfortunately. But that is where I feel, unfortunately, from a Sri Lankan or the Asian context, we have not seen that big wave of the digital disruption in these kind of the B2C kind of segments. So because, as I said, we have the B2C, B2B segments and B2B2C, right? Or from an online commerce perspective. And as we evolve the maze, I think a lot of organizations are taking bets on technology with still skepticism, I would think, right? In this part of the world. They are not rushing into, getting fully digital, because the apprehension is that in terms of the past behavior as well, during lockdown, people prefer digital from an omnichannel point of view. But post-lockdown, they're clamoring back to the physical store, where it's like more like a social visit experience for them, right? So it is ultimately conditioned by the culture of the people as well, right? So that's why I said it's a complex equation where you can't say it's a right or wrong answer, but you have to have the agility to flip the switch. So that is all I'm saying. We must build infrastructures which are able to adapt and embrace the change, not taking 1 year, but within a couple of weeks to months. So that's the agility I think you have to build in your investments.
No, absolutely brilliant. I mean, there can be no right answer than this, that while you can't predict the nature of the consumer, whether they will stick to the digital or will they go back to the physical, or will they experiment with phygital, the new term that has been coined in these past 15-16 months. But you have to be agile and have to be ready, not as a knee-jerk reaction to any occurrence or any instance, but as a natural, it should be a natural readiness that if something happens, how soon can you flip? The entire game will depend on this, and therefore you have to keep those pieces ready, and you also have to have that framework in your mind that how these pieces need to come together quickly to enable the customer, enable the organization. Brilliant. Finally, my last question. For many organizations, the only option left during the time of distress was to accelerate their digital transformation, and that happened in a very haphazard way. As you said, there was skepticism, there was unpreparedness. That means that moving from active experimentation to active testing, deployment, and scaling up, and continuous improvement thereon should be the part of the game. Do you have a clear view of where the value is going to be, and a roadmap that will get the organizations, take the organizations to a certain level?
Definitely, Rahul, because I think today the modern organizations, when I say modern organizations, is organizations post-pandemic, have to necessarily make a choice to move from centralization to orchestration. Right? Why I say that? So I think I remember even my own staff would say, Ramesh, we have to get these guys back to office. I said, why? No, because we don't know whether these guys are really putting their solid 8 hours. And I said, if that is our skepticism, we are probably in the Stone Age. We are not in the digital age, right? Because we then truly believe that we have to breathe on someone's neck to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do, right? So that very kind of belief, which is what screw us, right? So the whole question is, when you're talking about the post-pandemic era, it's important for us to understand and create a culture that every human being will be responsible to deliver what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And centralization must be only a necessity and not nice to have, right? So the orchestration. So then today, if you want to empower an employee sitting at home, right? I'm just saying, if you're having an employee in office, you will probably have a desk, a chair, a cubicle, office space, air conditioning, all the other sundries. It will cost you 10x, right? But if you can enable the employee with tech, it might be 1/10 of the cost, and you're actually making him more efficient, because he's not going to spend 2-3 hours traveling up and down, wasting time on the roads or on the transportation. So the opportunity that we have to awake ourselves to is, what is that you really want as outcome, right? From each of your employee, what is that you would want to build from each of the consumer or a partner or from the value chain, right? So then the digital transformation agenda itself is evolved to create a new normal, which has to start from your organizational culture itself changing, right? So very, very few people do not think and pay attention to that. Your culture is the number one thing that you need to attack for the new normal, right? If you don't change the mindset of the leadership, you're not going to, any amount of technology is not going to give you the deal, right? So your mindset of the leadership have to change. Then you have to align. So today, that's why I said, today, for me, the notion of whether this employee is permanent contract, whether he's freelancing, it doesn't matter to me, right? Because it is about the value he brings. If he can bring me value for 1 hour a day, that's okay. I only want him to work 1 hour a day. I don't need to pay him for 8 hours. I'll pay him for that 1 hour, even what he commands, then paying him for 8 hours and just keeping him in office, right? So the utility today is also getting challenged in terms of value creation, right? So today, I think in the new normal, I would see an employee even having 5-6 jobs, and we have to
absolutely
be open to that. We can't say, because you're working for me, you can't work for other companies, right? So if all these baseline assumptions would change, and that is what will drive efficiencies, and that is where the digital transformation will truly make sense and give you returns.
Brilliant. I think that should be the approach of any person who's looking for value creation rather than chasing something which is very infinite and which is not visible. You very rightly described that you have to really make a dent in the culture, in your mindset, to start with digital transformation. Every other piece is a supplement to it. It is not the core. Thank you very much for being on this discussion on this session. As always, it was a pleasure having you, Ramesh. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Rahul. Well, pleasure to be back again. Thanks.
Thank you.